We'll go ahead and call the meeting back to order. Can I get a motion that the closed meeting be closed, and the board certifies that to the best of each member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from the open meeting to which this certification applies, and only such business matters as were identified in the motion concerning the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered. Roll call, Madam Clerk. Get a motion?
So moved.
Second? We have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Mr. Ritchie?
Yes.
Mrs. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Honeycutt?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mrs. Garner?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Sturtevant?
Yes. At this time, we're going to stand for a pledge of allegiance and a moment of silence. Thank you. All right, we're going to continue with the meeting. Can I get a motion that the school board approves "In God We Trust" as the new school board motto?
So moved.
We have a motion for Mr. Johnson. We have a second for Mr. Edwards. Any discussion? If none, roll call.
Mr. Ritchie?
Yes.
Mrs. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Honeycutt?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mrs. Garner?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Sturtevant?
Yes, the motion is passed. We have adopted "In God We Trust" as the new school board motto.
Mr. Cyphers and his cousin, Tim Cyphers. Well done.
Thank you. Mr. Nichols, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Sturtevant. Members of the board, we have several recognitions tonight, and I have the privilege of starting tonight with two that we have determined that we want to do in honor of Black History Month. We have asked for two educators who have been in this county for many years, retired and served the county well. I'm going to come down to the floor. I'd like to ask Mr. W.P. Hudgens Sr. if he would come forward, please. I think most of you are very well aware that Mr. Hudgens has been serving Mecklenburg County for many, many years. He was a teacher, he worked with the school board, he worked with the board of supervisors. He has retired from those positions, but his service to the county goes on. Many people remember him very well for the many, many years of excellence that he served. So it is with great pleasure on behalf of the board and the staff of Mecklenburg County Schools to present this special Educator of Distinction award to you with our great appreciation.
Chairman, members of the board, Mr. Superintendent, it's an honor for me to be in your presence and to be recognized. Thank you so very much for remembering me Meade during this important month, Black History Month. We do appreciate it so very much. Thank you to her for your many years of service.
Can I help you with that? Or would you get that? Ladies and gentlemen of the board, the second one of these honors would be going to Ms. Lucille Hudson, who also has served for many years with great distinction. Ms. Hudson is not able to be here tonight. She felt that there were some things physically that would keep her from being able to attend. I know she's over 100 years old, so I think we can excuse that. But I will be taking this to her, and any of you as members of the board would like to travel with me as soon as possible to get this to her. We will certainly get this out to her. And I'd like to for us to give her a round of applause as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hudgens, on behalf of the board, I would like to thank you for your years of service that you've contributed to this county. I believe it was pre as well as post-segregation. I believe you also served in the central office as an assistant superintendent for many years. I've read that for the first 5 years, you weren't given the title, but after 5 years, you were given the title of assistant superintendent. So I appreciate everything you've done for this county. You've been a role model for many young people, and you're a living history book. And personally, I want to thank you for your service. Thank you, sir.
And at this time, I would like to ask Dr. Scales if he'd come forward for our recognition of Seniors of the Month.
Good evening, Mr. Sturtevant, Mr. Honeycutt, and school board members, Ms. Nichols. I'm very excited about these two great young people that I'm bringing up for the Seniors of the Month from Bluestone High School and from Parkview. First, I'm going to bring up Sophie Taylor Sherwood. Will you please come up at this time? And next, I'll bring up Jason Duggar from Parkview High School at this time. First, about Sophie. Sophie is the February Senior of the Month, and she lives with her grandmother, Mrs. Jean Snyder, in Clarksville, Virginia. She attends Clarksville Baptist Church and participates in the youth group there. She's an energetic young lady and has a great personality. She excels academically, as right now she currently has all A's, and she attends the Government School of Southside Virginia and looks to attain her associate's degree in general studies from SVCC in May, as well as her advanced diploma from Bluestone High School. Sophie is a well-rounded individual and is always busy. In her spare time, she enjoys playing the ukulele. She has also been on several missionary trips, to include going to Greenville, South Carolina this past summer to work with an orphanage. At the high school, she's a member of the Beta Club, Soda Club, YOVASO, which stands for Youth of Virginia Speak Out, the forensics team, and was the wrestling manager. Sophie is the senior class president and was selected to serve on the comprehensive planning committee for the school division this winter. After graduation, Sophie plans to attend either Clemson University or Princeton. She has already completed the first round of interviews for Princeton, and she intends to double major in political science and education. She told her administration that if she didn't get a job as a kindergarten teacher, that she was going to go to law school to become a law professor. Again, Sophie Sherwood.
She's got a priority state.
Next, I have from Parkview High School, Jason Duggar. Jason Duggar is the senior of the month of from Parkview High School, and is the son of Nicholas and Shamia Moody of Freeman. He has two brothers, Javon Duggar and Nicholas Moody Jr., a sophomore at Parkview High School. Jason can be seen on many sports fields during the school year as a member of the football team, basketball team, and baseball teams. This year, Jason was awarded First Team All-District recognition and honorable mention region for football. He is a member of the Fellowship of Christian Athletes Club. Jason has challenged himself at Parkview High School and is slated to receive his associate's degree from SVCC prior to graduating from Parkview in May. In the community, Jason is a member of the popular Mount Baptist Church. He is also a member of the Men of Valor, who collect back-to-school book bags and supplies in Henderson, North Carolina. In his free time, Jason enjoys playing sports, baseball, football, and basketball. And upon graduation, Jason plans to attend college to major in mechanical engineering right now. I just talked to him. He's studying on trying to get into the University of Virginia. He's waiting to hear from them. Great job. And at this time, congratulations to Jason Douglas, senior from Parkview High School. Parents, if you want to come forward and take pictures, you can at this time.
Go ahead and do the rest.
Congratulations to both of you. School board members and audience, just want to make you aware that Bluestone High School had a great wrestling season, and it culminated this past weekend with two of our wrestlers earning all state honors. In fact, we actually have a state champion at the 2A level. At this time, will Neil Clayton and Alex Hardy please come forward at this time? Both of these young men did a wonderful job representing not just James River District, not just, this thing doesn't like me tonight. They've done an outstanding job representing Mecklenburg County, James River District, the region, and going on to state. And again, this past weekend, Neil Clayton was the Junior High School League 2A champion in his weight class. And again, he was the second, his record so far is 26-4 overall, which is an awesome record, and we'll be having him for another year. He is a junior, and he is a state champion in the Virginia High School League. And it's not an easy task to be a state representative in wrestling because you have to go through multiple rounds. In fact, this year, they had combined levels at the regional level, so you had two regions together. And we have a regional champion here, as well as a senior that has an overall record of 25-16, and he finished as the state runner-up in his weight class for Alex Hardy.
And Dr. Scales, we'll add a little bit more to that. Alex, a.k.a. Tank Hardy, he's a transfer student this year. This is his first year wrestling ever, and he made it to the state tournament as a first-year wrestler. To his right, we have a state champion. This is his second year wrestling of a program that's only been in existence for 4 years. I spoke with Mr. Ritchie and the athletic committee, and hopefully there's going to be a discussion about getting wrestling at Parkview, because it's another opportunity that is open, and here's a clear example of a first-year wrestler made it to the state tournament, and a second-year wrestler is a state champion. It wasn't easy. They both worked hard, but we're proud of them. And parents, if y'all want to come up and take pictures.
That's all I have.
Thank you.
Good job, guys.
And Mr. Sturdivant, I think the board is also aware that February is CTE month. We had a wonderful CTE expo at both schools last week, and we're going to have a presentation tonight from our JROTC program, followed by Mr. Cyphers giving some information for CTE month.
And if we can get the parents who were awarded, the young athletes and the senior of the month just to hold up, and after we get this presentation out of the way, the board members would like to come out and have an opportunity to say thank you and congratulate them personally.
Right. Are you motivated?
Yes, I'm motivated, dedicated, educate, can't be duplicated, fly Air Force, you know.
If you didn't know,
Now you know.
forward, march. Left, 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 right, right, left, right, forward, one.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. I apologize, they told me to check this on. Right, good evening again, Mr. Chairman, school board members, and Mr. Nichols. Tonight, I would like to recognize our students and teachers in honor of CTE Month. Each February, we celebrate the career and technical education programs in Mecklenburg County Public Schools. As you have just seen just a few minutes ago, we had a presentation by our AFJROTC, which consists of cadets from both Bluestone and Parkview High School. So I'd like to recognize them first. So when I call your name, if you'll come up, please, and also Dr. Scales is going to help me. Adam Pierce. Amanda Carter. Micaiah Walker. Xavier Fry. And Josh Davis. Thank you all very much for your ceremony this evening. Also, we would like to recognize a student, a ninth grader at Parkview High School, Dakota Long. And we we would like to recognize Dakota this evening for a perfect score of 1,000 on the Word 2016 Microsoft certification, which is We're very proud of him. This is a very difficult task to get a perfect 1,000 score. In the years that I've been here, we've only had one or two other students do this. This is an amazing feat. Congratulations, Dakota. Also tonight, we would like to recognize those students who participated in the SOA Food Hub logo and actually won the logo contest. Ms. Ann Taylor Wright came a few months ago and gave a presentation on the SOA Food Hub and how we're going to partner with her, with our CTE classes and also other classes in Mecklenburg County. And in turn, they had a logo design contest. We had students from Mrs. Bland's class, Mrs. Dunn's class, and also Mr. Clark's class participate. And Mrs. Dunn's students, one of her groups were selected, so tonight we would like to recognize those students. So if you're here, you'll come up when I call your name. Anijah Clark, Genesis Simmons, Maisie Seward, and Haley Richards. And also, if I can have Ms. Dunn come up as well, the picture with them. These students all worked very hard, and we're excited that we were able to assist the Food Hub with their logo. And also, I'd like to take a moment to recognize any of our CTE teachers that we have in the audience with us tonight. I have some of the CTE teachers from multiple schools here. If they'll please stand, so we can recognize them. They were very instrumental in the success of both of our expos last week, as well as they're responsible for some of the gifts that you see in front of you in honor and appreciation for School Board Appreciation Month. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to say I attended the expo at Parkview and Bluestone, and the kids did a wonderful job. And those of you that did not go to Parkview, you need to go and look at the logo that these kids drew for the new food pantry, because it was amazing. And I'd like to thank all the students and especially all the teachers that do such a wonderful job in the CTE program. Oh, and one other thing. In the JROTC, whatever. Okay, Adam Pierce, I understand, has signed for the reserves of the Army.
Outstanding.
And, Mr. Chairman, should not go without recognition that February is also School Board Appreciation Month. There are gifts at each of your places. In recognition of that, we also thank each of you for the work that you're doing to keep the school system on track, and we appreciate it very much. I'd like to invite all of those who were giving awards tonight to come back up, because it's our custom to recognize, for the board to be able to come out and shake your hands. So if you award winners would come on up one more time.
Mr. Nichols, we're going to continue on. You have your 30 minutes for your information items.
Thank you, sir. Okay, moving right along. I'm very pleased to announce to the board and to the public tonight that Mecklenburg County Public Schools is the recipient of a $10,000 grant from Cypress Creek Renewable, and I would like to ask the representative from the company to come up and talk about the purpose for this, and then we'll have more discussion about the opportunities that it's going to bring. Mr. Parker Sloan.
Good evening, school board and Mr. Superintendent. I have some brochures on our company I'd like to hand out to you.
Go ahead.
My name is Parker Sloan with Cypress Creek Renewables. I'm based out of our Asheville, North Carolina office. Our primary office is outside of Durham, North Carolina. We are one of several solar farm companies that you may have heard of that's very interested in your community. Cypress Creek is a construction company, an engineering company, a long-term financial investor and operations and maintenance company of primarily solar farms across the United States, anywhere from 10 acres in size to 1,000 acres in size. We're very excited to contribute the $10,000 to the Educational Foundation here. I want to tell you a little bit about why we did that and what kind of commitment we'd like to make in the future. And also happy to answer any questions you might have about us or our commitment. We're interested very much in your community, specifically in our Ladybug proposed solar farm in Bracey, in the Bracey area. And with that project, we're hoping the construction of it will overlap relatively seamlessly with the construction or proposed construction of your new school in the community here, and we're hoping to with that construction, finance with the construction of that project, an additional $100,000 contribution to your school's foundation. And one idea that I have, and I guess I'll first say that we don't want to pretend to know what the needs are of your community, or very much interested in your thoughts and ideas of how to be the best community partner that we can. But one idea that we have that we've already initiated is a partnership with a group called the Bonneville Education Foundation and their Clean Energy Bright Futures program. And what it is it's a curriculum development program, and it is their belief, as well as mine, that the way electricity in the United States is generated, distributed, manufactured is changing, and it's changing rapidly. And so it's our hope to work with communities like yours to train and educate students of the future that can work in this industry in the future, whether it's second graders or community college students that are transferring careers and everything in between. So that's my commitment to you, and hope to work with you in the future. I hope this won't be the last time you see me here. I'm happy to answer any of your questions. If not, Mr. Nichols, of course, has my contact information if you want to reach out to me later.
I have a question. What was the commitment?
The commitment?
Yes.
Specifically, $100,000 to the Educational Foundation.
To our Educational Foundation.
That's correct.
Okay.
And I'd like to point out, we're very thankful, of course, for the Mecklenburg Business Education Partnership. We have representatives of the Business Education Partnership here tonight, as we have had meetings with them through the years, and they have been so supportive of our programs. They have offered to serve us as business and industry continues to get involved with our schools and in working with us on putting together the curriculum and the identification of credentials that students would earn. We're very pleased that in our Advanced Technology Center, we will not only be working now with Microsoft, but we will be working with Cypress Creek with this curriculum for credentialing for that new energy sector. We're working with Mid-Atlantic Broadband with some fiber opportunities for students to learn to do fiber. Tomorrow, Mr. Cyphers and Dr. Scales and myself will be meeting with representatives from Office Depot that are looking to bring to us information and opportunities for working with drones and getting students certified in drones. And I'm confident now. We had a meeting today in the region with a new program that Microsoft is supporting that's going to be looking more and more at businesses getting directly involved with the K-12 environment and recruiting and making sure that the jobs that are available in those programs are available to our students to be prepared for. It's an economic development issue, and our 6 career centers are ready to adopt these, and Mecklenburg Business Education Partnership has made their commitment to allowing funding that would come through these businesses for our schools to flow through them for the tax credit. So we want to thank McBeep for continuing, not just with spelling bees and with scholarships, but also working with us very closely in this way. And this is $10,000 that has already flowed into the account, and another $100,000 that is committed with the Doodlebug or Ladybug? Ladybug project.
Okay.
That would come through. So if there are other questions, then we'll entertain them at this
Ms.
point.
Bailey?
Yes, sir. I had a question. Is this curriculum, would it support the energy cluster that the Department of Ed is now is thinking about
Yes.
incorporating into our CTE
Yes.
Academy?
That would be the direction. We would be looking at energy for renewables, but also in preparing for the Linesman program and preparing for any of those areas that the students are looking at jobs for.
So then, that curriculum that you mentioned from Bonneville, I'm sorry?
Yes, the Bonneville Education Foundation.
They work in conjunction then with our Department of Ed with their SOL requirements?
Well,
in those?
they are out of Oregon.
They're out of Oregon, yes.
But we're looking at working with them and bringing them here, engaging the Department of Education and setting it up for us.
Very
We would be the first in the state to have a program of that nature.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sloan. We've had several conversations related to unpaid meal balances, and we're going to be asking the board to vote on the procedures that have been put forth on that tonight. That was presented to you at last month's meeting. I don't know if there are any questions that you might have about that. Did you have anything you wanted to add for tonight's meeting, Robin? No, sir. Okay, I think all the...
Any questions, board?
Yes, I do. They have collection payments and notices and all, but the third one, it says, notice will be via a phone call from the school nutrition program office and/or the school principal. I hope that the principals are going to be last resort because they have so much to do to start getting involved with the kids that owe money. That could take almost all day just for them to make phone calls.
Yes, ma'am.
And so I'm hoping that you mean that the principals, school principals are going to be the last people that have to do this.
I believe, Robin, the phone calls that are going out are the all
School
calls.
messengers, yeah.
Now, that's,
School ma-
that's number 2.
Right. That is currently the vehicle that's being used the most for communication to the parents right now. The times that the principals get involved, more so when we run into issues. I know at the elementary level, the principals help with communicating with the parents because their relationship with the parents are a little different than mine are. So it's not that we're asking them to make the phone calls. It's sort of, as you said, the last resort kind of. They help with that.
Because I didn't want to see anything else put on their plate with all the other things they have to do. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
I have one question.
Mr. Honeycutt.
Mrs. Moore, have the letters have they already started to go out?
Yes, sir. They went out on the 29th of January.
Okay, I remember
We're in
you
the
telling
third
us.
week of the letters. The first batch that went out on the 29th, the second letters will go out the 1st of March or the end of February.
I have a question. This is also in conjunction with the elementary and secondary coordinators as far as the development of this policy. And what I mean, like talking to Dr. Scales, is looking at that, utilizing the principals as the ones making the phone calls. Has that gone through elementary?
I've spoken to Dr. Scales about this. He was looking for the policy, and I told him we would be presenting that piece tonight for him.
Okay, are they in agreement with that, the process of utilizing the principals?
Can't answer that for you totally. I guess Dr. Scales.
Yeah, just because you're utilizing their personnel to do that, I think will be a conversation you would probably have to have with them as well.
I don't foresee any problems. I mean, either a principal or one of the designees will be able to do that.
Okay.
Hopefully it's not overwhelming, but again, I think with the phone calls right now being a preemptive strike, hopefully that will be taken into effect. But it'll reduce the numbers having to have an administrative call.
And if it does become overwhelming, I'm sure you'll have a conversation with food services and work it out. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
All right, any other questions? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, before we move any further, if you would, just for 1 minute, I know we've mentioned McBeep a couple of times, but I want to go back because this group does do such a great job in supporting our school systems for monies that are not appropriate or are not there. I see Request being a member of that McBeep. But I wanted to recognize Gina Larimore, who is the director, and also Gina Mull, who is our president. If you all would stand, please, so everybody can see who you are. They're over near the door. But I know I can, with the rest of this board, say thank you for what you do for Mecklenburg County Public Schools and funding those gaps. So our children are afforded every opportunity to do what they need or to have in possession what they need to do to accelerate and learn. So thank you very much for being here.
Items E, F, D, E, and F are items specifically related to policies that we have been looking at. Item C has been the drug testing policy that we have been having conversations about. D is also looking at the issues of school facilities, and I'll ask Mr. Jeffers if he'll come up to answer any other questions. We set those two up as two that you'd be able to vote on this evening, having gone through each of the questions that have come up. And then E and F, I believe Dr. Scales will be helping with and talking for ruling next month.
I think this is the first use of the community
Right.
use, yep. Good evening.
So,
Ms. Bailey?
Mr. Chairman, I looked through the policy KGR1. Are there any changes to that? Typically, the changes are in yellow or in red or marked through. I didn't see any changes.
That is a great point. There are many changes, so many, in fact, that it would have been almost a red document. So we kind of went back and started from scratch on this one.
Okay.
We had numerous conflicts in the existing policy, and so we tried to clarify, remove the conflicts that were in there and make it more streamlined and operational. So this is, as you look at it, would be a substitution policy, a new policy that would supersede the old policy.
do you want to go into any more detail on that one?
Yeah, if I could, I'll
Mr. Jeffers,
Mr. Chair.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to ask a question. I know there was a lot of discussion about band students. Was this applicable to band students? And what, do we ever render a decision, or are we?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chanka. The random drug testing policy is a policy that is made and designed to operate that any student participate in any extracurricular activity as so directed by the school would fall within our random drug testing policy. So Mr. Nichols met with the band directors, for instance, and the band directors confirmed that they would, in fact, concert band, marching band, competitions would all be included for that portion. And of course, but you do not see band members because the words that you see throughout here are student activities and extracurricular. So things like student parking, which is another concern that was brought up. The application for parking on school grounds will say parking is a privilege. This is an extracurricular. You'll be subject to random drug testing. So that, by having a clean policy, then you go over to anything that would maybe be suspect, and all you do is define it, say this is an extracurricular activity, and therefore you fall into that group. The list would be generated, 10% of those students would be tested, and away you go. Yes, sir. Thank you for the clarification on that question.
Mr. Edwards?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Evans, who initiates who picks the kids that are randomly drug tested? Is it left to the coaches, or is it done by the administration out of central office? I had
Yes, sir.
when I discussed some of this with the public, they were concerned that, you know where I'm going with
Yes,
this.
sir. And it is
If you
neither.
let-
It
if you
is
let-
neither what that you just
If you let the
mentioned.
coaches do it, they usually always know the clean kid, and he's
Yes,
the
sir.
guy that gets tested about every 30 days. I just wondered who's going to who will pick the person for the test, or we're going to put them in a hat and draw somebody?
We'll do a little more systematically than that. We will hire a partner, and once the board adopts this particular policy, we will engage with our company that will then actually, the school will provide the list of students for each of the extracurricular events, so the students participating in concert band, students in wrestling, the students that drive, whatever the list would be, those lists would be provided to our partner, no school official. Once the partner receives the list, they would have a random screening method that they would use to identify the students. They would then notify that to the, as you see set up here, a 3-member committee of school folks, the principal, the school designee, and the partner. They would then receive notice, these are the students to be tested on this day, and they receive notice on that particular day, along with alternates to be tested. So technically, no one at the school would know until the day they're being tested who is being tested. 10% of the population with random substitution, and also for, if those students are not present that day, then they would also have alternate students to fill in the full 10% to be tested.
Thank you.
The other piece of testing, if anyone in school suspects a student using, they can say, I would like to have that student tested, and that the company would then test that student as separately.
Thank you, Mr. Jefferson. Any other questions? Mr. Palmer?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Did we ever clarify the difference between athletes and band members and whom are getting a grade for their performance?
Yes, sir. After having a conversation with our band directors and talking that through, we decided that so if I'm in band for a class, then marching band, my performance in marching band or the competition on Saturday or the concert in the winter, those would all be considered extracurricular. And as the policy says, if those are extracurricular, then I will then be subject to drug testing. If I'm found to be positive in use of any of the identified substances, then they would not be able to participate in that particular concert, in that particular competition, or in that particular marching event for the prescribed number of days in the program. So a band member in those circumstances would be considered an extracurricular participant for those designated activities.
Okay. Any other questions as it relates? Ms. Bailey?
And I was going back to your other.
Regarding the facilities use policy?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Jeffers?
Are there any other questions with the drug testing first?
I do. You're saying that nobody at the school will know who is going to be tested until that day?
Till that day, that's correct.
Company comes in.
That's the way this is set up.
Okay. Any other questions as it relates to the drug testing? If not, we'll move on to the community use school facilities. Ms. Bailey?
Yes, I think the amounts for rent are the same, as I recall, from the old policy.
They are relatively close. We did look at those and think about them and revisit them, and they, by policy, they're to be set each year. And of course, this is our first showing of this, so we think, well, 400 is too much, maybe we should be 200 or 250. We can certainly look at that. These fees include, so just among the issues that were in there were, we had things, for instance, that groups could use the cafeteria facilities themselves. That's not appropriate. That you can use the cafeteria, the space, but not the ovens and the things like that. That's not a normal piece of it. So that's one thing that was removed. We had that there was some kind of conflicting information in here about continuing use that wasn't really clarified. We also wanted to clarify how we pay the custodial staff and to make that very standard. So when you look at if you have an event, so if someone's going to use the cafeteria stage area for something, they're going to pay $200 for the half day. That would include, and that fee would be paid directly to the school. The principal would receive notification. Payroll would then, or our maintenance folks, custodial folks would be paid from MCPS from the $200 that's put in there. The way it was set up is that people were being paid directly from that organization using that, which would not be appropriate. So we wanted to make sure we clarify this to make sure that our people are doing our work and that we have some controls over this. We standardize the amount of hours, standardize, how we think about these things. Like if there's a 4-hour event, then custodians would probably be there for 5. They'd come in, open it up, get the heat on, get whatever they need to, and they would stay later and clean it up. We also talk about if it goes long, then how that would be structured. We clarify that when you look at the form, it's a new form, and we try to make that very clean as to who exactly is using this, who's the responsible party, making sure that the principals cannot waive fees. The superintendent may waive fees, and that might be another place you'd want to have conversation. And then this form itself would then kick back to the principals so that they would know how to designate the time, who's going to be working the time, and how to make sure we get everyone paid. So there's, like I say, it's considerably different. I mean, there would be changes in virtually every paragraph throughout, but I encourage you to look at them side by side, or I could even bring it back with the red markup, but it would look mainly red.
So item 9D, what if an organization is renting it, and what if no one else is standing in line to rent it?
Yeah.
Then the agreement can go on.
6 months in perpetuity. And so this form, the community use form is a 6-month form.
Yeah.
So at the end of 6 months, you would have to renew that. And if during that time someone else came through and said, I would like to use this space, this particular space at this particular time that you're using now, then we would provide notice to that other group and say, now you have X amount of time to find another place. So the other group has noticed that they would like to use this space. So that's how we tried to make that clean, yet also not put it so far out in the future, but also not hang over someone's head. You've got 2 years maximum that you can use this. You could use it as long as no one else is wanting it, and then you have your window to get out.
So is there a window there? I mean, if someone comes in 5 months into your agreement and says, I want to use it, so they just get a month notice that they're going to be out of there, or?
No, you notify them that month. As of now, there's another group who'd like to use this space. You have 24 months from now that you may continue to use this space.
Gotcha.
At the end of that 24 months,
Okay.
this other group that expressed interest would be able to walk in and use the space from that
Thank
point.
you for
Yes, ma'am.
clarifying that.
Any other questions regarding community use of school facilities? If not, are there any questions about the advanced degree supplement?
Thank you.
Nothing with advanced degree? We'll move
Is there an
on.
attachment for that, Mr. Ferdinand?
No.
So,
Mr. Jeffries, if you come on back up.
so is there going to be a change? I guess that's my question.
What?
The advanced
Advanced
degree
degree.
supplement, the way that's being, that we don't have that.
Oh, we did not touch that on you're talking about steps and all that?
Right.
Yeah.
The idea of this advanced supplement is that currently we are selling
Sorry.
persons when they get their master's degree or doctorate degree, that they would wait, if it's not before June 30th, they would wait for a full year if they get it after July 1st before they get started paid. We're looking at it now and asking the board to consider when a person has received, and we verified that they've received that degree, then we will start paying them, but prorated for the time that they get it after the first of the year. So
So-
it gives us the opportunity to have someone that's completing that degree get credit for it as soon as they've completed.
We didn't change the amount, but if I got my master's January the 1st, and then I'd be able to get my prorated pay for my master's supplement February through.
For the remainder of that contract year, as a way of trying to help keep our teachers who get those degrees.
Paid earlier.
We vote on this in March,
Yes,
next meeting?
yes.
Yes. Any other
It would
questions?
not have impact on anybody until after
We vote on it.
this year.
Are there any other questions in regards to the advanced degree? If not, move on to the next one, Consolidated Code of Conduct. Dr. Scales.
Good evening once again. Before you is an information item of where currently our school division has a separate code of conduct and a separate student handbook. And in most school divisions across the state, those documents are actually combined into one document where you've got the code of conduct and student handbook all in one. And in the process, what goes from 2 documents could actually go down to one document. And I'll let you know that with the process of merging these 2, I started with the code of conduct and added the handbook in because there was a lot of duplications. There were some things that weren't quite accurate. And I've already met with the principals to make sure that regardless of whether we go with 2 separate or go to the single consolidated document, whatever we go with, it's going to match up with what currently is being practiced within our schools. And there's some things we streamline, but for the most part, it's really about making sure we're getting just pure information that will go out to students and parents without giving too much information. But again, it's there. And again, I started with the code of conduct and brought our current student handbook together. And just, again, instead of doubling, having 2 sets of attendance pieces, I put them all in together with one and just merged them all together. And what would have been 2 documents at 73 pages, right now what you have, and still subject to change, is down now to 50 pages, but it still has everything in there. But again, we've kind of streamlined a few things. When you get a chance to look through it, you certainly can. And again, if you have any additional questions after you've had a chance to review it, I would gladly be willing to discuss it with the instructional committee if you'd like. But definitely it's the process of what most schools are doing with a single document and not 2. And also in the long run, instead of being 2,500 twice, we're 1. And hopefully the following year, if we go with the single document, I can then split it again where we got one for the middle school and one for the high schools. That will cut these down a little bit thinner to where you just got, because there's a lot of information that does not tie to the middle school at all. So again, but that's a step. I'm going to take it one step at a time. If we can go this direction now and you're fine with it, then we can move forward the next year with a single document and split it among the middle school and high schools.
Thank you, Dr. Scales. Mr. Nichols?
Yes, sir. It's time for the budget to be presented and taken to the Board of Supervisors. I'd like to begin the presentation to you tonight by giving you the schedule. I will present this to the board tonight, as we have for the last 3 years. In 2 weeks, on March the 5th, I would like to ask you to have a special meeting for the public hearing of this presentation. It cannot be held, it has to be 10 working days after this is presented to the school board. And then once we've had the public hearing, there would be some time to make adjustments that you would want to make or others. And then I would ask that we come back at the March meeting for you to approve what we finally commit to. So if there want to be changes, we may have a special meeting for those, or if it comes up at the public hearing. We have to give at least 2 days after that before we can go any further. The information that I will be presenting in this PowerPoint is the information set up in diagrams and charts, just as we've done before. So before going into those details, I'd like to point out a few things for the school board and the public's attention. First of all, this budget is significantly larger than what we've seen in the past, and that is primarily because of the bonds that we have for the new school project. So it's typically we've looked at about a $50 million budget. This is a $150 million budget because of the bond issues that we have to work with. So that's a huge, significant factor right there. The second thing that I'd like to point out is that a significant portion, and the school board and the administration's priority has been the, number one, the increase in salaries for staff persons, and then our second primary goal was to be able to fix the salary scales for our teachers and staff. I have provided for the board members the salary scale fixes on paper for teachers, instructional aides, assistant principals, and principals. I will be getting to you as well each of the other categories as we're looking for this across the board. You will be seeing data related to that in the papers that you have. It shows item by, category by category, the impact of that increase. And as everybody knows, the state is looking at a 5% increase for teachers. We are overall looking at the 5% across the board, but as we're trying to fix the scale, which will have the long-term impact of an increase for teachers every year, then we're looking at the idea of the guaranteed 3% for everybody, and then beyond that, with the scale, we will have the 5% overall, and most teachers will be getting that, but then increasing each year. And we think that the new scale that you see is much fairer because the old scale, number one, had a beginning salary for new teachers at a little over $38,000. The new scale for new teachers, which should be helping us recruit, starts at $40,000. We're finding as we go across the board, looking at other school divisions in our own region that we're competing with, that's pretty much the salary for each one. And then the other thing that our scale does is each year there is an increase as opposed to having 3 to 5 years in between scales for there to be an increase for a teacher to get. So that's significant in what we're looking at. With that in mind, I will move forward with the presentation with our PowerPoint presentation to page 3. Our focus for the 2020 is employee morale with more competitive salaries, school improvement and accreditation issues, high-quality personnel retention and recruitment, and we'll be talking about that more later, professional development, future leadership development, increased career and technical education experiences, the work that we need to continue to be doing towards the state's requirements for profile of a graduate, and then the high school redesign program with the high school. So whenever we're looking at the budget, we have to start with revenues. So the first slides that you will see under the projected revenues will show, if we can go on to that first. Couple of movements forward. There. The operating fund sources of revenue projected, you can see state funds, federal textbook funds, school food funds, and then some other along with the local projected, and the way that that would be coming in to support what we are asking for. I don't know if you have any questions along the way. I expect you want to have time to look for these things, but moving forward, then the revenue funds, other funds that you see in this, well, the $614,000, 1% of it include local transfers, Air Force ROTC funds, Medicaid funds, dual enrollment reimbursements, non-resident tuition rebates, and then the LINK program. Moving on to the next slide, we have projected revenues, funding sources, and you can see as you go through those, the projected revenues that we are looking at in each of the areas. That must have gone on down to the next one. No. There we go. I'll just let you look through those rather than read through them. It will go by quicker. And they're very carefully put together. And then projected federal revenues, Fund 3. The various areas. If you see anything along the way that you want to ask about, let me know. And then moving on, federal revenue sources, Fund 3, as they would break up in the program. I have explanations of each of these as you would want to, if you have questions on them. Projected revenue for school foods would be Fund 2. And then, of course, you'll see a huge increase as we move to the next slide, Fund 4, for our debt service. You'll notice that there are two loans, one that was the bond from 2017, one that's the bond from 2018. We still have some unpaid balances on South Hill Elementary.
Mr. Nichols?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman? What is this outstanding balance at South Hill Elementary? Do we know?
It's a bit over $500,000. Do you have an exact figure off the top of your head?
There's two loans at South Hill Elementary, and last year, I think it was $3 million left in the loan, so there's probably about $2 million left on that, those two loans. Those are the two ESBA loans at Hillsdale Elementary.
So what we're seeing here is actually what we'll be paying out in the year. All right, and then we've got the textbook revenue funds, 5. And then moving on to projected expenditures, fiscal year, you'll see we've got listed as a 3% salary increase plus adjusted salary scales, which meets the expectation of the state for the 5% overall. And then we've got some specific requirements that have been brought to the table from the principals and the directors, and those items that we feel like we must have moving forward with the Board of Supervisors, and I will be working with the Board of Supervisors individually on explaining why we feel the need for each of these. Most of these items are not in the standards of quality. They go beyond their expectations of the standards of quality. We do have hope that the state is going to approve the new standards of quality for our school counselors, and if they do, then the 4 behavioral specialists would come out of that funding for our elementary schools. So that would be a SOQ program. Moving on.
1 second. I saw there was a stipend for the high school chairs, department chairs.
Department chairs.
Don't the elementary schools have something, grade lead teachers as well?
Lead teachers at the elementary schools.
They don't have anything similar to that? I thought the elementary school had something equivalent to that.
No.
They have grade chairs.
They do have grade chairs, but no, there's no pay for it. That's the, yeah.
So we're not requesting for the elementary, just the high
Right.
school?
Okay, continuing technologies, operation and maintenance, some of the areas that are there. And then, of course, the increase in the debt service itself. We do not, next slide, we have not heard yet about our health insurance and potential increases in health insurance. We did not have any increase in health insurance from 2018 to 2019. I have a meeting with, we have called the company Pierce Benefits that works with us on that and asked for that information as soon as possible. And we have a meeting with them Thursday of this week, I believe, Ms. Alga, 28th. That's next week. And hopefully we will hear at that point because it has an impact on our teachers. So, but we do not have that information yet. And then operating each of the categories you can see, and I will remind the board that our Board of Supervisors has chosen to work with us by having to approve each of the categories instead of the overall budget. And that's different from some school divisions. They have the option of either doing the whole budget or category by category. So we present it in this way. Moving on, here's a breakout from our category expenditures for Fund 1, and you can see the different areas by color: instruction, administration, pupil transportation, operations and maintenance, and technology. Obviously, it's our goal always to make sure that instruction is our #1 priority.
Mr. Nichols,
Yes, sir.
this presentation you're doing,
Yes, sir.
can you forward that to the board?
I will be happy.
Because we're following along, but trying to keep notes, and it really would have been beneficial to us to have this so we could follow along while you're doing it as well.
Okay. Yes,
If we can get that by tomorrow,
we will do that.
thank you.
This is the operating fund comparison from one year to the next, showing the increases. And then we've got total projected expenditures and total projected revenues. And then the budget overall with the increases that are there. And again, I will have copies of this for all board members.
Any questions, board members? Mr. Honeycutt?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Nichols, I want to go back and touch base on, was it the SOQ for the guidance counselors according the new requirements as far as ratio
That's
per?
right. Yes.
So is that reflected in this budget as well?
Well,
Is that a hiring additional guidance counselors?
we have the option with that. The requirement is for a 250 to 1 ratio.
Right.
So we would have increases in our SOQ funding for those positions, and we would look at them appropriately. The reality is, and we've said all along, there are not enough counselors out there to complete that. So the state has given us the opportunity to work with hiring psychologists or hiring behavioral specialists. And at the elementary level, we've talked all along about the need for the alternative education. This would give us the opportunity to work with the hiring of behavioral specialists, to have one at each of the elementary schools to work with those students and try to help with that situation.
So that would take that part of the guidance
would
counselor's
help with-
workload
it would-
away from them where they could
Yes.
back up to those ratios that would be more realistic.
Absolutely.
That they would be able to do their job efficiently.
Yes.
Okay.
Ms. Bailey?
I have a question about the composite index, Ms. Pfeffer. That's biennial, like our budget? It's when they set the composite index, or they do that annually? Biennial. And what's our composite index right now?
0.36.
So when you compute our local share, do you include all of the funds 1 through 5?
Yes,
Okay. Thank
that's
you.
our spending budget.
Okay, so, and that local portion was 24 and change, 24.5, right? So you divide that in the total, correct? What I saw up there was the local portion was 24,489,860, and then our total budget is 56,635.
Mr. Nichols, can you pull it up?
That's the local contribution, I was thinking local funds. That's the local contribution from the Board of Supervisors.
Okay.
The supplements every other revenue fund we have.
Right, so that is the percentage, that number should at least be the 36% of what our total budget is, correct?
Yes, at least.
Okay, thank you.
The reality is, that is more than that amount, and that's what, we have to know every year, is the board can always say, we're giving you more than what is required by the standards of quality.
Any other questions?
I'd also like to add an item that we will be having a conversation with the Board of Supervisors about. It's not reflected in this budget, but if you could move over to the next spreadsheet.
You're on this for information?
Yes, this is for
Okay.
information. We have been working very closely with Mr. Dalton and the Capital Improvement Committee with the understanding that for the past many years, the Board of Supervisors has taken leftover monies and others and worked with us on using it for maintenance of our buildings. And it is our understanding that as we build the new schools, that money will go towards the cost of the new schools. And we feel it is our responsibility then to be able to continue to make the Board of Supervisors aware of what we anticipate maintenance costs will be with projects that we will have to keep the elementary schools and all of the schools going from year to year. So we've put together a 5-year maintenance projection for budgeting purposes, including items that we feel are necessary for each of our schools and the central office. And this spreadsheet has been shared with the Capital Improvement Committee, and I will share with each of you as well. Again, this money does not become a part of our budget for next year, but it is a forecast of ours looking at things that need to be done at each of the schools to keep them maintained appropriately. So it's broken up, and you can see the items that we would be suggesting for 2020, and as you move down the spreadsheet, you will continue to see items for each of the 5 years, 2021, 2022, 2023, 2024. And we're doing this, again, letting them know that it's our goal to be responsible with the buildings and try to keep them maintained. The Board of Supervisors has stated that they are looking, after we get started with the new secondary building, at investing about approximately $30 million for an upgrade of our 3 older elementary schools. And many of these items would be part of that renovation, but we don't have a commitment yet for that, as we wouldn't expect to have a commitment for that yet. And so there are items that could be a part of the renovation, but we feel as well that they must be considered as we look down the road. Items that are not funded or items that are not, we're not able to get to will carry over to the following year. And therefore, the funding would just continue to move, and every year we will add another year so that we'll have a continuous 5-year project as we're going down the road. And we just believe that this is the way to be responsible and let the Board of Supervisors know that these are items we feel like are going to be necessary to be taken into consideration. Any questions about that?
None.
That's a new part of our budget outline. Okay, there are a few items that you will be voting on tonight or considering tonight that have to do with our goal to make sure that we recruit teachers and fill the positions that we have. So items H, I, J, and K all have to do with this program for us. We had a special meeting a week or so ago that was talking about the internet. I'm sorry, I've jumped over the Virginia is for Learners. I'm going on to I right now. I'll come back to H. The International Teachers Program, there may be some other questions related to that. The Teach for Tomorrow program, Mr. Cyphers, and it's been in communication with the Department of Education. We have started the surveys related to beginning that program, and we have fairly significant interest in that we would be able to start next year as part of our CTE program. We have been in touch with Longwood's Call Me Mr. program, and I had a conversation today with Longwood about that as a way of trying to recruit more minority males, possibly into education as teachers. And so there are numbers of things that this board is looking at working with us and doing and making sure that some of those are going to be successful so that we can fill our teacher roles for tomorrow. We have several of our administrators and teachers that are going out in our recruitment fairs. Unfortunately, the one that we had on Friday at University of Virginia, there were no teachers for tomorrow available to recruit. Dr. Lax was a part of that, and she came back very disappointed in what's there. We're afraid that's what we'll find in a lot of places, but we're still going to be very progressive and aggressive in going after building our own cadre of teachers, and all of these are items that you may have questions on before a couple of them come up tonight for review and vote. Any thoughts or questions on those items?
Want to take them one at a time? Any questions on item H? Well, I, International Teachers Program. J, we're going to have a discussion. We're going to have a discussion on that. Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Well, Teach for Tomorrow. Call Me Mister. Okay, no questions on that. And you're going to do a presentation on the Virginians for Learners program?
Yes.
Okay.
The state, in working towards the goals of profile of a graduate, has now decided to break the opportunities to engage the schools in preparing for that into cohorts of about 25 schools each year. And they are selecting those schools based on somewhat application, but also based on what has been done already in working towards the 5 Cs with students and the career development, academics, the credentials, and so forth. And I'm very pleased to let the board know and the public know that Mecklenburg County was selected in the first cohort to be a part of that, and we have a team of 6 persons that include the Economic Development Coordinator from Mecklenburg County, because the county is very anxious about seeing this program and our new schools progress. It includes a representative from the community college for the seamless transition from high school to the next level, as well as the Higher Ed Center in South Boston. And we're very pleased to have been selected for the first cohort, and I think it's going to open up some more doors like we've seen tonight with Cypress Creek for business participation, as well as for grants and other things for our schools. So I'm very pleased to announce that tonight. Moving beyond that, I'd like to bring to the board's attention that we have also had an investment from the community to help us engage orchestra out of North Carolina with this Orchestra 2100 program. Our first and second grade students have been throughout the year working with this orchestra in learning music and orchestral music, and we'll be having a presentation of our students' artwork as well as playing with the orchestra this year through when we have our new schools and auditorium. The performances and the program will be in Henderson, because that's the only place there's a facility large enough for our first and second graders to meet with them. But when we get our new school with a 1,200-seat auditorium, we'll be able to bring it back and have a great program for our elementary schools and getting them engaged in music. So please put that March the 6th on your calendar and work with us in your invitation to go down and see our first and second graders as a part of that program. And there's a lot to this month, but that's my comments for this month.
Thank you, Mr. Nichols. We're going to be moving on. We're going to pass on to item N, which is chairman remarks. We'll get to that at the end. Going into committee reports. Joint Education Capital Improvement Committee.
Nothing on joint education at this time. Capital improvement. We did have a meeting. We talked about the chairman couldn't make it. I was there. But we did talk about what we just discussed about the future planning for money over the 5-year plan. That was one of the things we talked about. The other thing that we looked at was the new weight room and wrestling room. There was some complaint about the size of that. The architects went back and redesigned that room, made it larger. And after a meeting with all the coaches and athletic directors, which was very, very productive, because everybody had their input, and at that point, it was redesigned to put some closets that would house the wrestling mats that would keep them out of the children's way so they couldn't walk on them and also damage them. And also, we redesigned it with a center wall. I think we're going to be shown that a little later. I'm not sure if we'll be shown that when we vote on it in the school design. But with a center wall with 8 feet of open doors, 10 feet high, so that you could, when wrestling is not happening in the off season, you can open the room up and make it one huge room, which is almost the size of a full gymnasium. So it almost gives us an extra gymnasium to use rather than those other classes. I mean, it really worked out well. So that's what we covered under the Capital Improvement Committee. Thank you.
Also, as oftentimes we have a lot of committees, in the event there's a conflict with the chairman of any committee, we're going to seek the guidance from that chairman to reschedule. We're going to try not to do the meetings without the chairman there, if we can. So in the event there's a conflict, let's defer to the chairman on those committees. Finance Committee.
I had a question for Mr.
Yes, Ms. Bailey?
Do you remember the dimensions of that?
I think it's going to be, when we vote on it tonight, I think, you can show us that plan tonight, or do we have that? I have it here somewhere. It's huge.
Okay, any other questions, Ms. Bailey? We'll get that.
Yeah.
All right, Finance Committee?
The Finance Committee met this afternoon at 5 o'clock. Basically, what we covered was the payment of the bills. There were no questions. Everything was in line with payment. The recommendation is to pay the bills, and will be when we vote on it.
Thank you, Mr. Edwards. School Safety Committee? Anything to report?
No.
Okay. Moving on, Gifted and Talented, Special Education Committee? Anything to report?
No, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Ritchie. Item,
I've got on school.
I don't know if that's a
Usually
committee.
comes under, that usually comes up like this.
okay, do you have a comment on government schools, Ms. Bailey? I mean,
Well, other than the government school is not meeting tomorrow afternoon.
okay.
And Mr. Ritchie is going to take his rocket launch. We're going to vote by email.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Garner. Item E, CTE, Career and Technical Education Committee. Nothing to report. Athletics Committee.
Nothing to report.
Okay. G, Instructional Committee.
We did meet with Mr. Nichols and members of the administration and principals regarding the possibility of partnering with EPI to get unfilled positions, teaching positions. And it was the people that were present at that meeting that day thought that that would be a reasonable route to take.
Okay.
They- The one, they just suggested that it be done on the secondary level and not so much on the elementary level.
Okay, and that's going to be up for vote tonight. Thank you, Ms. Bailey. Madam Clerk, public input.
Yes, we have people speaking tonight. At this time, matters may be publicly brought to the attention of the school board and administration. Public comments at school board meetings are just one of many avenues for communication, and the board recognizes and appreciates the importance of input from and communication with the public we represent. The public is invited to sign up to speak. The clerk of the school board will write down your name, contact information, and the topic that you wish to speak about. The public is allowed up to 6 minutes at most meetings to express their views. Please respect that time limitation. It will be enforced. Please understand that it may not be possible to immediately respond to questions. As a reminder, it is inappropriate at a public meeting to make personal attacks, to be defamatory, or to disparage individuals or identifiable groups. Again, we welcome and appreciate your input. Prior to beginning your comment, please state your name to the board. Desmond Owens and Jarrell Seward.
Hi, my name is Desmond Owens, and I'm a junior from Brunswick High School.
And my name is Dario Seward, and I'm also a junior from Brunswick High School. We are here today as members of Y Street. Y Street is the award-winning youth volunteer program of the Virginia Foundation for Healthy Youth that focuses on promoting healthy living in Virginia. We are here to talk about Y Street's 24/7 campaign, how they are partnering with Virginia school divisions to adopt, implement, and enforce 100% comprehensive tobacco and e-cigarette-free school policies. Though youth cigarette use has been greatly reduced to 6.8% based on the recent Virginia Youth Risk Behavior Survey, 11% of students reports have used electronic smoking devices daily. We want to make this number even lower. Under a 100% comprehensive policy, tobacco and e-cigarette use, possession, and distribution is prohibited by anyone, anywhere, at any time. The Mecklenburg County School Division is doing a great job committed to the health of students, staff, and visitors.
Currently, your policy language reflects what is required by the state, but we would like to partner with you to strengthen your policy, to help clear up any gray areas, and to become 100% comprehensive. In your folders on the left-hand side, you will find copies of the current tobacco-free policy, in addition to a letter that outlines the revisions to become comprehensive. Some of those updates include removing the ability for principals or directors to designate smoking areas on the grounds outside of school buildings, strengthening the definition of tobacco products and tobacco use to include electronic smoking devices and products containing nicotine, expanding the definition of property to include off-site events and surrounding properties, whether owned, leased, rented, or chartered by the division, extending the policy to include possession and distribution of tobacco products by students and minors, prohibiting the use and distribution of tobacco products containing nicotine and electronic smoking devices by staff, contractors, and visitors, whether on or off-site, and offering cessation referrals to staff and students who want to overcome tobacco addiction. As a partner in research to Mecklenburg County School Division, we are here to help as you continue to strengthen your commitment to healthy students in your schools and in your community.
Once you decide to adopt a comprehensive policy, the 24/7 campaign has great ways to support implementing and enforcing the policy. First, we will provide free tobacco-free signage to all schools in your division. Second, our free tobacco and e-cigarette-free schools toolkit will be sent to all schools in your division. A copy of the toolkit was provided to the board clerk. Third, we will add you to our official map of 100% comprehensive divisions on our handouts and website. And finally, in your folder, you will find examples of how we can help your school division earn positive publicity for updating the tobacco policy. On behalf of West Street, we thank you for taking the time to learn more about the 24/7 campaign, and we look forward to adding Mecklenburg County to our official map of 100% comprehensive schools. Thank you.
Excuse me, what were your name and what school are you from?
I am Dario Seward.
Desmond Owens, we're from Brunswick High School.
Seward.
Yes.
Okay, does your father work for Southside Community College?
Yes.
Okay. He's a good guy. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I might point out, with the new drug policy, the testing policy, this will actually test for vaping, nicotine in vaping. It's the only program that we have right now that can give us an opportunity to check for nicotine in vaping. So that's a part of what you're looking for, I know.
Thank you for the information. Board members, do we have any questions? Nothing? Thank you.
Barbara Spain.
Good evening, Chairman and school board members and Superintendent. My name is Barbara Spain, and I serve as the Secretary for the Historical Black Schools of Mecklenburg County, Virginia. Also representing tonight are alumni from the old East End and West End high schools, as well as Science Institute and the Mecklenburg County Training School. This organization came into existence some 5 years ago. It consists of alumni from 4 old schools I mentioned. Its mission is to collect, assemble, and preserve for posterity a collection of artifacts, memorabilia, and profiles. Then to secure a facility worthy of housing and displaying the collection for educational benefit for the public. We meet monthly, currently the 4th Monday evening at the Borden Library, and whenever possible, historical artifacts and other documented materials are displayed for educational purposes. A historic display is available from 10 a.m. to 3:00 p.m. each Friday and Saturday during the month of February at the Thine Institute Memorial Center on Highway 47. This organization was incorporated in the state of Virginia in September 2014 and was also granted a 501c3 status of the Internal Revenue Code and classified as a public charity organization. We understand that the Library of Virginia has authority to retain all school records and materials if the records are deemed of historic value. Once the Library of Virginia has made a determination of the value of the records and other materials and found that any or all of the materials have no particular historic significance or value, the Historical Black Schools of Mecklenburg County, Virginia would like to request your consideration in the acquisition of these materials, which might include pictures, documentation, trophies, signs, etc. And from the old West End and East End high schools or any of the elementary schools. The artifacts and materials will be housed at the Thine Institute Memorial Center for display and until an appropriate facility is secured. Thank you for considering this request.
Thank you, Ms. Spain.
That's everyone.
That's it? We're going to move into action. Can I get a motion that the school board approves the minutes of the regular school board meeting held on January 22nd, 2019?
Second.
We have a motion from Ms. Bailey and a second from Mr. Campbell. Roll call.
Mr. Ritchie?
Yes.
Mrs. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Honeycutt?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mrs. Garner?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Sturtevant?
Yes. Bills, do you have a recommendation from the Finance Committee?
Finance Committee recommends the bills be paid.
All right, that the school board approves payment of the bills. Motion? And a second.
Oh, a second.
Get a motion?
I had the motion.
Okay.
have to.
A second. Roll call.
Mr. Ritchie?
Yes.
Mrs. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Honeycutt?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mrs. Garner?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Sturtevant?
Yes. Get a motion that the school board approves the personnel recommendations.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, roll call.
Mr. Ritchie?
Yes.
Mrs. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Honeycutt?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mrs. Garner?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Sturtevant?
Yes. Request for supplemental appropriations. Get a motion that the school board approves the request for supplemental appropriations.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion, Mr. Edwards, second, Ms. Garner. Any discussion?
Did the Finance Committee talk about it?
Yes.
And you're making that recommendation?
Right.
Roll call.
Mr. Ritchie?
Yes.
Mrs. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Honeycutt?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mrs. Garner?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Sturtevant?
Yes. Moving on to signing bonuses. That the school board approves offering signing bonuses for hard-to-fill teacher positions. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
We have a motion, Ms. Garner. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second from Mr. Palmer. Do you have a discussion?
Discussion.
Mr.
Yes.
Honeycutt?
Mr. Chairman, have we worked with Mrs. Alga and I guess Mr. Nichols as well, administration, on how much these signing bonuses are going to be? Could we get a dollar amount of what they would be?
We have had a signing bonus specifically for high-needs areas. The high-needs areas in the past have been identified as math, science, foreign language. In the past, we looked at HPE because we were looking for a specific female HPE teacher for one of the schools. And this year, we would add to that list the library media specialist because we've been without a library media specialist through the year. Am I missing anybody, Ms. Alga?
Special ed.
Special ed, I'm sorry, special ed. We filled our roles with special ed this year. It's easier to get a special ed provisional certification than it is in some of the other areas. But that's always an area that we're looking for.
So a dollar
And
amount.
the dollar
that we're
amount we had
gonna
looked
offer.
at, what we have used in the past was a $2,500 signing bonus. That was $1,500 the first year and then $1,000 to come back the second year.
So this past year, when we offered those, how many teachers did we get from those bonuses?
Ms. Alga?
We've had 8 special education teachers that have joined us. And I want to say we have
Can you come up, Ms. Allen?
I'm sorry, I can't, I didn't hear anything you said. I'm sorry.
It's not always good to yell from the back. We had about 8 special education teachers that took advantage of this past year. I know of 1 math teacher at Bluestone High School, and I'm thinking overall probably about somewhere between 10 and 13 total that took advantage of.
So other than the special education, we had 1 math, but what about the science position at Parkview High School that's been vacant for 3 years? Any of those?
No, sir.
Okay. What about our library media specialist at Bluestone?
The library media specialist is at Parkview Middle.
Is it Parkview Middle? Okay, so we did hire somebody for Bluestone Middle.
Yes, sir, we did.
Okay,
Yes,
okay.
right, of North Carolina, we sure did.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Edwards?
I would like the opportunity, I think this is a good idea for signing bonuses, but I'd also like to use this to have the Finance Committee and the Director of Finance work together to see how much money we're going to have left at the end of the year to take this money and reach out to our other counties to, when we redo our salary scales, we're going to be equal to or better than a lot of them, and that's going to really help us in recruiting. I'd like to see us take some of this and reach out to other counties like Charlotte, Lunenburg, to try to get these specialized teachers by giving them a bonus to move from those districts into our district to make it more attractive, rather than just using it for just a quick bonus. If we have to pay to get teachers in here, when we move to this next thing that we're going to talk about bringing in teachers from out of the country, we're talking about spending $12,500 to a company to recruit for us. I think we're smart enough and intelligent enough to take money that we have left over in our budget and do our own recruiting within our community to a 4 or 5 county surrounding area, because these people can live at home and commute to us and teach our kids. We've got to make it attractive. We already have a new school coming that's attractive. We're already planning a 5-year program to enhance the educational opportunities in our elementary schools. I think we've got everything going for us, and with the programs that our superintendent has put together for us in the back in the state of Virginia and Microsoft and our Board of Supervisors, I just feel like we can recruit teachers within our local community, within a 4 or 5 county range, and put this back without flying teachers in from out of the country. That's just my feeling.
Okay.
But it's the board's wishes. Thank you.
We have a motion and a second. And the issue at hand right now is whether or not this board will authorize signing bonuses. The amount we do not have. That number is going to come from how much money we have end of the year and what the recommendation will be from the superintendent as well as HR and administrators to hopefully get 100% hiring of our specialty positions. So,
A point on that I'd like to bring out is that end-of-year monies would have to be spent before July 1.
I believe we have
And so this would be focused specifically on persons that we would be able to recruit in before that time period.
Yes.
If you give me a school bus and $12,000 for every teacher I'll bring back, I'll bring you a busload.
Okay, so what we have in hand right now is the signing bonus. We do not have the amount. We're going to look for a recommendation. We're voting strictly to authorize the signing bonus. And the other question has been come up about what do we do with the teachers that are already here. Mr. Nichols, I think you had mentioned something about a recommendation of possibly a stipend for retaining the ones that we currently have. That's going to be worked out, but right now we have a motion and a second to approve signing bonuses. Any other discussion? If none, Madam Clerk, roll call.
Mr. Ritchie?
Yes.
Mrs. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Honeycutt?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mrs. Garner?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Sturtevant?
Yes. Next item, that the school board approves Working with Educational Partners Incorporated. We have a motion?
So moved.
We have a motion, Ms. Bailey. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second, Mr. Palmer. Discussion.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I know we just voted on the signing bonuses, but are we going to be able to physically or financially work, and I guess this is for Mr. Nichols, with both of these equations? Would we be able to offer the signing bonuses and also work with EPI for some of those core positions that we may or may not be able to fill with a sign-in bonus?
Well, a couple of things I'd like to remind the board from our discussion when we had the special meeting. When we work with EPI, we are asking them to look for, and our principals have the opportunity to use technology to screen these persons before they're brought. They don't just bring them and put them in our laps. Another issue that's there is previous experiences with companies that have done similar have been working with teachers with the J-1 visa. This one will be with a different visa that we have.
This one is.
This is the J1.
J1. The other ones are H1.
Right, and we have no responsibilities with this visa, the company inherits all of that responsibility. The $12,500 fee is a fee that is paid to the company to take care of many of those specific expenses. We don't pay anything but salary. We don't pay any benefits for any of those persons that would come in.
Any VRS?
No, there's no VRS. So it's basically, we looked at it, it's basically a wash as far as the cost of the teacher to us for the only 3 years that they're here with us. So it's not a matter, it's not a bonus, we're not looking at bonuses for these teachers, it's just a matter of being able to help find them, and if our principals and interview teams do an interview and find that the language barriers and things like that are appropriate for our students, then we would make a commitment to bring them over. I feel like we would definitely want to hire anyone locally or within our own country, wherever we would find them first, and then when we get to a point where we still can't find teachers, then this would be an option that we would look for. It's not going to cost us anything. It's not going to be a matter of extra funding. It's only going to be for the teachers.
And that's what I wanted the public to be made aware of, that this, this is not something that Mecklenburg County schools are going in the hole for. Again, we strictly do pay their salary. We don't pay their health insurance. We do not pay into the VRS for them. So pretty much that $12,500 is a wash. Oh, a washout, it's just, even.
Right.
And my concern is, and again, I'm thinking down the road a little bit. I know you've just presented us with a budget. How much of that we may or may not get is not known. So, I want to be able to have another option. So that's why I ask, could we do both? Could we work with both?
Yeah, the positions that we have that are standards of quality are required positions.
Correct. Math, science.
The math, science, those positions are required positions. And so the funding is there in the budget for those things. The issue of the current bonuses that we have been given, the $2,500, are monies that we have been using primarily from a federal grant that we have, the title funds, that gives us that option to be able to work with that. We've had a conversation about using end-of-year monies to be able to attract some teachers. That would be end of year, so there's nothing new that would be there for next year that we would not be knowing about.
Okay.
Mr.
All right.
Chairman.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Palmer.
The reason I second it is because we learn from your mistakes. The last time we did similar, we went wholesale into it and we brought too many people. We just went and grabbed and brought. Hopefully this time, learning or knowing the mistakes that we made the other time, we will screen much harder and pull in only those that can help us and not just go haywire and pulling people into our country.
Mr. Edwards.
Okay, here's the boogaloo that nobody wants to talk about. The federal government has made a deal with 60 countries. These teachers come into our countries, come into our communities. They stay 2 to 3 years and then they leave. They don't pay taxes. They get their taxes refunded to them at the end of the year. So you teachers that teach every day, you pay taxes. They come in and going to make the same salary you make. They're going to get their a car paid for. They're going to get their health insurance paid for. And then at the end of the year, they get all their taxes refunded. We'll take the taxes out all year, but at the end of the year, they get a full refund of all the taxes that they paid in, all of them. So to me, if we could offer that to all you teachers out there, I'd feel really good about it. But that was the one thing that really bothered me, that people are going to live in our local community, in our state, and our federal, and pay none of those taxes. And that's what supports our schools. So actually, we're hiring people that don't support our county or our schools. And that's just what I got from the meeting myself. And man didn't like me very much, but that's, a lot of people don't.
Any other discussion?
Yes,
Ms. Bailey.
I
Ms.
do.
Bailey.
I'm sorry.
They don't get their car paid for. They pay for their own transportation. But we're not going to be offering signing bonuses to all of our teachers either. So we've got, the majority of our teachers aren't going to be getting a signing bonus. I think this gives our principals another option to fill positions that we've not been able to fill. And I hope the signing bonuses will help us do all that. But if it doesn't, I don't want to go another year without a science teacher at a high school level, or another year where our foreign language teachers are basically overworked because they're doing the job, that we should have another one. So this is just, I think that we need a comprehensive approach to this problem that we have, and I think that let's trust our principals to get out there and interview these people, not only the ones that we might steal from someplace else, or whatever our needs are, let's give our principals as many options as they can have. Thank you.
Mr. Honeycutt?
Yes. I feel like I may need to make a statement, and I don't mean it derogatory in any way to the public, but I don't want this board to be no longer held hostage for what happened in the past. We are looking at new secondary schools in Mecklenburg County, which are gravely needed. I have heard we've done this, we've done that in the past. We can't undo the past. The same thing with look at the mistakes we made with the elementary school. We can't undo that. We're looking forward. Again, I agree with Mrs. Bailey. This is another option to get qualified, certified teachers in our classrooms. I have been on this board 3.5 years, and our Parkview Senior High School still doesn't have a certified SOL science teacher. I have a real problem with that. And it gives us another option. I want our children to have every opportunity to learn and to learn correctly.
Thank you, Mr. Honeycutt. Any other discussion?
Yes.
Ms. Garner?
I'm voting for this tonight, but I want the understanding that the foreign teachers are going to be at the bottom of the list in the recruitment. We need to do more outreach for our teachers in America before we start bringing them in. And I have worked with the foreign teachers, and they're highly qualified. A lot of them, the problem was language. And I think with this company, if what they say is true, we can overcome that. The other problem is classroom management, because their culture is a lot different than theirs. And they don't understand or cannot handle a lot of our kids. And that's where some of the problems. So I really want this company to be at the very bottom of the list. And the principals have a lot of say-so in who comes and who doesn't.
Mr. Chairman, one more comment.
Mr. Edwards?
Maybe the interview process should have some children available to watch it on TV so they could see if they understand the teacher before we hire them. They're the ones that have to understand them. We don't need to understand them. But the children are the ones that are in the classroom, and they're the ones that are going to be under fire if we make a mistake.
Do we have any other discussion? Mr. Campbell?
They're not going to be eligible for the sign-on bonus, correct?
No.
Okay.
Mr. Palmer?
My last comment is,
He said that.
my last comment will be, our children are going to have to compete with people from all around the world when they get out. We must have them get quality education at this level in order to be able to compete with these same type people that we're talking about bringing in. If they can come in and help our students get stronger in math, science, et cetera, and as Ms. Garner has said, we're going to go first for the U.S. teachers, but then if we can't find qualified teachers, then we reach and pick these people to come in. So for that reason, I still vote yes.
Thank you, Mr. Palmer. Any other discussion? This has been a good discussion. Mr. Nichols, do you have a recommendation?
I would recommend that it be one more thing in our policy to be.
You would recommend yes?
Yes.
Roll call.
Mr. Ritchie?
Yes.
Mrs. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Honeycutt?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mrs. Garner?
Yes, with reservations.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Edwards?
No.
Mr. Sturtevant?
Yes. Moving on, that the school board approves the adoption of the Go Math curriculum for elementary math. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion from Ms. Garner, a second from Ms. Bailey. Any discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Ritchie?
Yes.
Mrs. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Honeycutt?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mrs. Garner?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Sturtevant?
Yes. Drug testing policy. That the school board approves the new drug testing policy. Do you have a motion?
So moved.
Motion from Ms. Garner. Do you have a second?
Second.
Second from Mr. Palmer. Any discussion? If none, roll call.
Mr. Ritchie?
Yes.
Mrs. Bailey?
No.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Honeycutt?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mrs. Garner?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Sturtevant?
Yes. Unpaid meal balances. That the school board approves the revisions to policy EF-R. Do you have a motion?
So moved.
We have a motion from Ms. Bailey. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Mr. Ritchie. Any discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Ritchie?
Yes.
Mrs. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Honeycutt?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mrs. Garner?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Sturtevant?
Yes. Next item. Mr. Nichols, do you have a copy of the new secondary school floor plan?
Yes, there is a copy that's going to be projecting up on the screen.
Do we have an individual copy?
And prior to getting to the motion in a second, do you want to show what the differences are?
Yes, the old policy, or the old, excuse me, not policy, the old architectural rendering was coming straight across from, if you move back up, that's the area right there. Hold it, go back up. Move it back up just a little bit. Okay, so it went straight across at the bottom part. They came in and they added room where you see the seats. The seats are not supposed to be there. The wall that has been determined would be the wall that would be along, right in between what says weight room and wrestling. Actually, the coaches recommended that we move the two options across from each other, that the wrestling area be where the weight room is and the weight room.
Mr. Superintendent, can I walk over to the board and show them?
Yes.
Nobody else going, what?
Okay.
I mean, I'm just pointing
Go ahead,
out.
Mr. Edwards.
You can point it out. You know where we're gonna put the wall in, there are two doors, and build a wall for the closet, and that way they can really.
So do they flip it or no?
Huh?
Are they flipping it?
No,
They took out some of
The
the,
wrestling room will
yeah.
be in the weight room will be in the wrestling
So
room.
the big part would be closest to the
The
gym?
original drawing was coming straight across here. They
Right.
came in and added this particular piece. And they suggested now, as we had the conversation, that the wrestling area be here, the weight room area be here. This is just not inconsequential. The storage areas will be in this area. And right in here will be double doors that would allow it to be opened up so that the whole thing can be used when wrestling is not in place. And they can have large football teams and others to be able to come and play.
So there's a corridor there, so that corridor is going to be narrower?
Yes.
Only-
It was unused space.
only This area and this won't make any difference because this is. going
Yeah, but it's
to
going to
the
be flipped. Apparently, the wrestling area is going to be...
No.
No. It's the same size, it's just
The people will
designation.
be flipped, the
The
space will stay the
size,
same.
the
Size will
size
stay
is
the
the same, okay.
And we're reducing the size of what's wrestling now by those seats, because that's gonna be a closet to house the mats for the wrestling room next door. So they'll roll those into there, stand them up in those closets, close the doors, so the kids can't get to them when wrestling season is over. So that gives a whole space. That leaves about 2,700 square feet in that room. The other side, the weight room, is gonna be almost 2,000 square feet, because you take those two closets out, and that opens that room up. It's in the weight room now, and that'll be the wrestling room.
Okay, that's the changes that have been made.
Right.
After seeing the changes, that the school board approves a plan of the new secondary school to include the recommended changes from the capital improvement committee meeting.
Motion approved.
Second.
Motion from Mr. Edwards, second from Ms. Garner. Discussion.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. So I'll have to reflect to Mr. Edwards because I was unable to make that meeting one day before my busiest day of the whole year. Is that going to be adequate space for our weight room?
Yes, that was a big part of the
Because
discussion.
I know that was a big discussion last
That was,
month.
right, that's, when we looked at this, after much discussion among other coaches, that was, and administrators, that was determined to be added.
So we won't have to be shuffling any weight equipment or anything like
No,
that? It'll just
there will be
stay
no-
in place wherever it is?
That is correct.
Okay.
Any other discussion items?
So is that square footage increase fits within our budget?
Yes.
It's going into plans, so hopefully that's going to be it.
Mr.
We don't know if we're going to be in budget for anything anyway.
Ms. Nichols said yes. Is there any other discussion?
You know, I gotta ask.
Mr. Campbell.
What's the square footage of the barn?
Mr.
Okay, that's
Campbell,
we
I'm
can, if you can send an email to the architect so he can provide us that information.
Okay. we
This
have
is
a
just
we
the
have a
actual.
drawing for the barn.
Yes.
Voted on everything.
That hasn't changed.
That's the
Yeah.
only thing
That
we hadn't
didn't
voted
change
on.
from last.
We approved everything the other last meeting.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second, we've had discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Ritchie?
Yes.
Mrs. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Honeycutt?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mrs. Garner?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Sturtevant?
Yes. Request for historical records. That the school board approves working with the organization Historical Black Schools in Mecklenburg County, Virginia, and Mr. Glancy, Spain, to preserve historical materials from the East End and West End high schools. Do you have a motion?
So moved.
We have a motion from Mr. Palmer and a second from Ms. Garner. Any discussion?
Yes. I just, and again, because I couldn't hear really well, but where did you say all of these artifacts will be placed?
At the Design Institute Visitor Center.
In Chase City, outside of Chase City Elementary School, is a facility.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Any other discussion? If none, roll call.
Mr. Ritchie?
Yes.
Mrs. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Honeycutt?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mrs. Garner?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Sturtevant?
Yes. Item L, there was an amendment to the agenda that the school board moves our March school board meeting from March 18th, which is Monday, to Tuesday, March 19th. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Motion, Mr. Palmer. We have a second from Mr. Campbell. Any discussion on that? Roll call.
Mr. Ritchie?
Yes.
Mrs. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Honeycutt?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mrs. Garner?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Sturtevant?
Yes. Item 12, which is the school board reminders. Board members, you can take a look at that on your board docs. We're going to move into the board member remarks. We're going to start to our left. Ms. Bailey.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to make the board aware that Section B of our policy is filed BHB, and it's entitled School Board Member In-Service Activities. I just wanted to make the board aware so that you have plenty of time to put this on your calendar. May 15th, here at Central Office from 12 to 1, we've been signed up for building a high-impact board superintendent partnership. If you're unable to make it that day, we will have a recording of that in service, and you can, this would certainly qualify as fulfillment of that VHB policy, and we all need to be up on that. So I just want to make sure you had that on your calendar, May 15th from 12 to 1. And if you let me know you're going to be here, I'll have lunch for you. And also, at our next meeting, Mr. Sturtevant, I'd like to add to our agenda a discussion about partnering with the young ladies from Brunswick County for free no tobacco usage signage. Signs can be very expensive, and this program apparently offers free signs. So I'd like to, for us to discuss that possibility.
For more information?
To see what we have to do to change policy if that's
Okay.
necessary, or add to policy, or whatever that would take.
Mr. Nichols, can you do the research and present something to us?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
And between now and our next meeting, we're going to miss Dr. Seuss's birthday. So y'all be sure and volunteer to read at an elementary school near you a nice book to children. Thank you so much, Mr.
Thank you, Ms. Bailey. Mr. Campbell.
No, thank you.
Mr. Palmer.
Yes, sir. I was hoping that a lot of our retirees would stay until the end where we could recognize them. But anyway, I still want to call their names out, and if you know them, if you see them, tell them that I recognize them at the end. Now, this is the next thing. Sometime when you start recognizing people, you know how we do in church, we lose someone. So if I leave someone out, please raise your hand. Mr. and Mrs. Hudgens, I know that I saw them leaving. Mr. and Mrs. Spain, to right over here. Mr. and Mrs. Watson, they were here. All of these are our retired teachers. They were people that have been here who put the work in, put the sweat in, and did a great job. Mr. Ricky Allgood sitting right here in front of us here. Put a smile, Ricky. And Miss Priscilla Walker sitting over to our left here. And do we have anyone else that are retired in the county that came back to stay with us tonight?
Say tired or retired.
Ricky, I know you're not tired, but anyway, I just wanted to throw in that I wanted to recognize these people, and thanks so much for coming back, being with us tonight. We appreciate that.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Mr. Edwards.
I'd like to thank Mr. Stutterman for initiating that on our wall. I think it says volumes about our school board and about our county, and it shows that not only do we trust God on our money, we trust God in our school systems, and I think we need to push more of that, and maybe wouldn't have as many problems as we have. Let's try to get these things, that really matter back into our school system. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Edwards. Ms. Garner.
Mr. Palmer and I were thinking along the same lines. We worked too long together. Mr. Hudgens was in central office when I was there. I worked with Ms. Hudgens for 10 years at the middle school. Coach Watson was the second principal I had when I started teaching. Ms. Walker back there was my guidance counselor. I'm sure she was irritated with me a lot of times. So even though I'm retired, these people we all worked together well when we were there. I didn't know about Miss Spain and Miss Spain. I didn't know whether they were in the system or not, but the others I did.
Thank you, Ms. Garner. Mr. Ritchie.
No comment.
Mr. Johnson.
No comment, Blake.
Mr. Honeycutt.
Yes, I just want to say, great meeting this evening. Want to say a special thank you for Mr. and Ms. Spain. You're here, especially Mr. Spain, who I serve on the Joint Education Committee with on the Board of Supervisors, and appreciate your dedication to being a good steward of our monies in our county and giving us what we need to succeed as far as education is concerned. Again, I do realize we're going to miss Dr. Seuss month. I mean, we're going to miss his birthday. So again, I'm signed up to read to the yes, I'm signed up to read at the Christian school next door to the shop. Also, I didn't recognize a member of McBeep, and I apologize. I did not see her until after she got up and left. But that was Betty Dionellis. So when y'all see her on the street, say, Gavin didn't forget you. But anyways, again, we've a lot of great things going on here in Mecklenburg, and I'm just glad to be a part of it. Thank you for what you do.
Thank you, Mr. Honeycutt. Mr. Nichols.
Yes, sir.
You have anything?
I'm good. I think I've talked enough tonight.
Okay. Kept it within 30 minutes, right? Also, on behalf of the board, I'd like to thank everyone, the students and the staff that gave us these great gifts. We're going to put them to use. The small things matter to us. I'd like to thank everyone who stayed with us tonight, to include the media. I know some of these meetings get long. Thanks for coming. Thanks for reporting. We all enjoy reading about it.
Mr. Spain won't sleep a wink tonight after seeing that budget.
All right. Do you have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor? All opposed? Meeting is adjourned.